Meanwhile, Hurricane Florence could bring rainfall well beyond the coast because of its structure. National Geographic detailed the threat in an article titled "Why Hurricane Florence is Such a Dangerous Storm." Sarah Gibbens wrote that article, and she joins us now from Washington with more. So, Sarah, what is it about the structure of Florence that makes it such a threat inland?
Well, Florence is a very large hurricane. It's moving really slowly, and like previously stated, it's really warm. So that means it's capable of carrying a lot more rainfall than a hurricane with lower temperatures.
How exactly, when you look at the Appalachian Mountains, how will that potentially play a role in the damage that the storm may actually do?
Well, the Appalachian Mountains makes it a lot harder for the storm to disperse, first of all, so that barrier is really going to slow it down. And once it actually does hit the Appalachian Mountain range, it's going to force the storm upwards. And once that storm air is forced upwards, the moisture there will condense, possibly create more clouds, and generate even more rainfall than we would have seen just by the storm alone.
So with all of this rain that's expected, how might we see the effects of the storm ultimately?
Well, there will be a lot of flash flooding, definitely. Mudslides are also a possible risk, and the regions just north of where the center of the storm will hit are under a tornado watch.
So Klein has noted that the storm is coming off Africa. That makes it more dangerous. Why is that?
Most of the storms that actually hit the East Coast around this time of year originate off the coast of Africa. This is because you have the combination of a warm air current funneled by the Saharan desert. That air current is mixing with the seasonally warm waters in this part of the Atlantic, and that sort of double whammy there creates really strong storms that travel for days, if not weeks, across the Atlantic Ocean and build up into these really large hurricanes.
I should mention Klein is the meteorologist over at NOAA Hurricane Support. But, you know, with all this damage that the storm could actually cause with rain, why does rating this, there's such a focus on, is it Cat 1, Cat 2, wind speed? Why is that always such a big focus?
Well, the ratings help definitely quantify how much impact we'll see from wind, but with this storm in particular, a lower rating, I think it's a Category 2 now, doesn't necessarily mean that it's safer. With the lower wind speeds, it's going to definitely last longer than it would have if the wind speeds were higher. So the sustained damages that we'll see from the wind will potentially be worse.
And Sarah, when we talk about climate change, what do we know about climate change and the effects of these hurricanes? It feels like we're seeing these more and more dangerous storms. Is there a correlation?
Well, what we saw in the analyses that came out after Hurricane Harvey hit Houston last year is that climate change is definitely playing a role in making these storms stronger, more frequent, more intense, and rainier. There's already some preliminary studies out about Florence saying that the storm is perhaps 50% worse than it would have been if climate change wasn't a factor. So we definitely see those impacts.
All right, Sarah Gibbens, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.